Yo, what's up, this is NY3 making a video that nobody in the world asked for, but it is a topic I'm very passionate about and have a lot of fond memories of. It is a video about the history of the game, more specifically the history of the Dragunity archetype, and since I am someone who has played every iteration of Dragunity since its inception until today, actually I'm still playing it in the current format, which is kind of wild, but since I am a player like that, by extension this video is also going to be a history of myself as a duelist. Now I have no idea how long this video would end up being, but I'm guessing over an hour, so if this is not a topic you're interested in, just feel free to click away. But if you just happen to be in the mood for some reminiscing of the good old days of Yu-Gi-Oh! Or if you just want to learn some history of the game, or you just simply want some background noise to sleep to, this long-ass documentary podcast thing might be for you. As for the presentation of this video, it's going to be in tier list format. I'm going to chronologically go through all 11 sets that released Dragunity cards in them. And at each point in time, I'm going to be moving the Dragunity cards around on the tier list to reflect how good those cards were at that point in time. Now there's going to be 4 main tiers. There's going to be the A tier, which were Dragunity cards that you would definitely play in a Dragunity deck. There's the B tier, which were cards that were debated amongst Dragunity players whether you should run it or not, but a lot of people did end up running, or just in the side decks. There's the C tier, which were the Dragunity cards that were not good at the time, but the Dragunity players knew that they had potential. And finally, there's the F tier, which were the completely hopeless Dragunity cards that even the most hardcore of Dragunity fans considered hopeless. Now to start off with our journey, we must journey back into late 2010. Now I did say this was going to be in chronological order, but chronological order is different depending on where you were in the world. In September of 2010, Dual Terminal 3 came out in North America, which consisted of the first wave of Dragunity support and 5 main deck cards and 1 extra deck card. These would come out for the rest of the world in December of 2010 in Hidden Arsenal 3. And bang in the middle of these 2 dates in November of 2010, we got Starstrike Blast, which introduced 2 Dragunity extra deck monsters. So depending on where you were in the world, you either got these 2 cards first or these 6 cards first. Now since I am in the rest of the world, I got these 2 cards first. But I'm gonna be presenting these 6 cards first, as the order of release wasn't as important as the order that we got the information in. Now, the North American release dates were more faithful to the OCG release order, and we all had internet back then. We were all searching up what the OCG was releasing, which is why even though I got these cards first, these 6 cards, I knew about them first. So the first wave contained Dragunity Tribus, Dragunity Phalanx, Dragunity Darkspear, Dragunity Legionnaire, Dragunity Dux, and Dragunity Knight Gaybolg. So an amazing batch of first support, all 6 cards showing promise, and going all straight into the C tier. Now, the reason why none of these are higher, even though individually they all seem pretty good cards, is because a pure Dragunity deck was not playable at this point. Konami, for some reason, with the early dual terminal archetypes, intended them to be, 100% monsters, and really did not want to release spell trap support for any of these decks. Pure Dragunity was not a thing, so we can't in good faith put any of them above C tier. So why would I be interested in such an archetype at this stage? Well, at this stage I was playing Cyberdarks in the schoolyard. So of course I would be reading every single level 3 or lower dragon that came out that could be equipped to a Cyberdark. So of course I would be interested in this card here, Dragunity Phalanx. Not only could it be equipped to a Cyberdark, it also had an effect while equipped to something. And Phalanx's effect being, it can just summon itself, and it's a level 2 tuner. So how could it not catch my eye? But how did we get to this point? Why was I playing Cyberdarks of all decks in the schoolyard? Now, I've always been enamored by, the rival character in the show. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. I really didn't like the main characters. So of course my first starter deck was starter deck Kyber. My second starter deck was starter deck Kyber Evolution. And then after that, GX started. And I got my first structure deck, which was structure deck Dragon's Roar, aka the Armed Dragon structure deck. So being a broke ass kid with a budget of cards that were $5 or less, how could I improve my Armed Dragons against that one guy who I duel with every lunchtime? After looking at everybody's traits, Cyberdark looked like the obvious answer. They were pretty cheap. You can equip an Armed Dragon level 3 and it becomes a 2k normal summon. Equip a Masked Dragon, it becomes a 2-2 normal summon. Equip a Hunter Dragon, it becomes a 2-5 normal summon. They were 800 attack on summon, so they couldn't be trap hold. They can survive a battle once. They had bonus effects like burn damage, direct attack, and piercing damage. It's the obvious evolution of my schoolyard Armed Dragon deck. And how can we do better than a 2500 normal summon that has bonus effects? Well, the answer wasn't Phalanx for quite a while, since this guy Goyo Guardian was outside of my budget. Until the tins came out, of course, but I wasn't going to be able to afford a main booster box ultra rare like Goyo Guardian. So my options were, like Gaia Knight, the vanilla 2/6 level 6 synchro, or Iron Chain Dragon, which is a 2/5 synchro. That's not better than like just the 2/5 normal summon who has other bonus effects. But as soon as I got my hand on a Goyo Guardian, the Phalanx was, an excellent card for me. Just because Phalanx can be used in some kids' Cyberdark deck, or at least one kid in the world, I would put it as the best Dragunity card of this era. The second best Dragunity card of this era, I would say, is Tribus actually. Tribus level 1 Wing Beast, so it wasn't helping you in any way when making synchro monsters. But it had an effect when it's normal special summon, you can dump a level 3 or lower dragon from your deck to the graveyard. So you can dump the Phalanx, you can dump the Hunter Dragon. It was a pretty cool addition to my Cyberdarks. And it's also a Wing Beast that you can tribute off with Icarus attack as well. Just overall pretty cool. The third best card, I would say at this point, was the Dragunity Legionnaire. Now, Dragunity Legionnaire on normal summon can equip the Phalanx, and then the Phalanx can summon itself. And since it's a level 3, you can make level 5 synchros. The obvious one that comes to mind is obviously Ally of Justice Catastor. I didn't have that though until it got reprinted way down the line. I was only making Magical Android and being pretty happy about it. But Legionnaire also has the other thing it could do, which was instead of using the Phalanx to summon itself as a tuner, the Legionnaire can throw the Phalanx into the graveyard and destroy a monster on the field. After you do that, you get a random 1200 attack, which was alright in terms of stats, dude on the field to attack with. And then it's obviously a Wing Beast that you can tribute off with Icarus attack. I thought it was alright. Now the fourth best card I would say is probably the Ducks actually. It's weird having the Legionnaire over the Ducks, but at this stage, Ducks was kind of just a strictly worse Cyberdark monster. You normal summon it, it has the effect to equip Phalanx from the graveyard, and it gains some attack, so it's a 1900 normal summon usually. And like the Cyberdarks, it just made generic level 6 synchros. There was only one guy at this point, the Gaborg. I'm gonna put that as the fifth best card of Dragunities at this time. There was one specific level 6 monster in the extra deck that Ducks could make and none of the Cyberdarks could make, and that's a Dragunity Knight Gaborg. But it wasn't very good, especially when you compare it to the rest of the dual terminal archetype's first boss monster that was released. It's competing with things like Catastor. It's competing with things like Browneck. Dragunity's got Gaborg. I mean, it's not terrible. It basically ran over any problem in the game. It can temporarily boost itself for the turn, 2-3-5 if you banish a Ducks in your graveyard, for example. But Yu-Gi-Oh! At this point was moving away from stats. You could say it hasn't been about the stats since GOAT. And finally, Dark Spear, I would say, is the worst card of the first wave of support. but it's still worthy of a C tier. It's like a Lone Fire Blossom if Lone Fire Blossom was shit and summoned from the graveyard instead of the deck, and summon Winged Beast instead of plants, and only summon level 4 lowers. So that's what Darkspear was. But you can still kind of see the potential. There was rarely any tuners at this stage that had like good effects. So being a level 3 tuner and having a shit effect was kind of okay. And later down the line, I did find some combos that I could do with the Darkspear. When Dragunities actually became a combo deck, I was doing things like, if I can send a barrier statue of the Stormwinds to the graveyard, and then summon the Darkspear with an Atom or a red MD that you easily have access to, you can tribute off the Darkspear and summon the barrier statue of the Stormwinds and floodgate out your opponent. Darkspear has potential like that, which is why it's in the C tier. So yeah, next up, the Starstrike Blast set gave Dragunities 2 more Dragunity Knights, and Dragunity Knight Vadriana and Dragunity Knight Gaydurg. So now we have 3 level 6 options that only ducks can go into and not the Cyber Ducks. And these 2 were pretty big reasons to run ducks over the Cyber Duck, or at least include like the ducks amongst the Cyber Ducks. So as soon as Starstrike Blast came out, I think ducks would have been better than the Legionnaire at that point. Now it's quite fortunate that they printed Vadriana as the super rare and Gaydurg as a secret rare, because Vadriana was by far the better one that you wanted 3 of. So, if it was the other way around, if Vadriana was a secret rare, a lot of people who wanted to play Dragunities would have not been able to play Dragunities. Even, Gaydurg being a secret rare, and Gaydurg being a card that you only ran 1 of in Dragunities for like basically most of its lifetime, was still a problem down the line, since it was so hard to get. A lot of people who wanted to play Dragunities got priced out because Gaydurg was a secret rare. Specifically, a Starstrike Blast secret rare, the set notorious for only having a first edition print and not a limited edition print. Starstrike Blast secret. The 3 words that no Yu-Gi-Oh player wanted to hear about a card that they actually wanted. But yeah, so what was so good about Vadriana that made ducks on par with, normal summoning a Cyber Duck and equipping Phalanx? Vadriana has the ability to equip a Phalanx when you synchro summon it. And then the Phalanx can obviously summon itself, and then you can go into a level 8 synchro. While there might have not been many options in the level 6 synchro pool that was better than like just the 2/5 Cyber Duck beater, level 8s definitely had significant improvements from that. So we're talking Stardust, we're talking Colossal Fighter, we're talking Thought Ruler Archfiend, we're talking things like Scrap Dragon. Now, Stardust, Colossal Fighter were really easy to get. They were 10 cards. I think Thought Ruler Archfiend took me a while to be able to get. But all of these were like amazing options that Vadriana now gave you access to via synchro climbing. You can also choose to not synchro climb with Vadriana. You can send the equip to the graveyard instead and double its attack to 3,800. So that's immediately bigger than what Gabolg usually achieves. However, Gabolg still had a niche. So Gabolg, being able to boost itself on your opponent's turn instead of only your turn, gave Gabolg like a defensive niche. So Gabolg wasn't like completely useless at this point, but like 98% of the time it was overshadowed by Vadriana. And yeah, I'm just gonna put Vadriana at about the 3rd best card in Dragunities at this point. And finally, the secret rare, the Gaydurg. Now it was alright, it had the highest base stats at 2,400. And it obviously adds a level 4 lower Dragon Winged Beast and then discards one. So at this point in time, Gaydurg was like a role player who was like a very hard to access Dragon Ravine before Dragon Ravine. Basically, you invest the ducks into making it, and then it can go ahead and search a Duxo Legionnaire for next turn, and then if it survives, it can, search another Duxo Legionnaire for the following turn. So, it was an okay card. I would rank it above Gabolg for its utility. Now, the second wave of Dragunity support came out in January of 2011, which featured 8 main deck cards and 2 extra deck cards. So this was the Dual Terminal 4 release. The rest of the world got it in Hidden Arsenal 4, which was April 2011. Right in between them, of course, the structure deck Dragunity Legion came out at March 2011. But we're just gonna start off with the Dual Terminal 4 stuff, so these 10 cards. Now, while the first wave of support, every single Dragunity card of the first wave of support was a great card in its own right, all 10 of these cards were trash in their own right. Probably the most disappointing second wave of support you could ever imagine. These cards were Brandy Stock, Corseska, Partisan, Javelin, Pilum, Militum, Angusti Clavi, Primus Pilus, Dragunity Knight Trident, and Dragunity Knight Barcher. So we'll just go ahead and get the 3 stooges of Dragunity out of the way first. So going straight into the bottom of the F tier, and he's gonna stay there for the rest of the video, Dragunity Angusti Clavi. Being a 1 tribute monster with only 2100 attack that may do piercing damage on a good day, like Cyberdark Horn was not a tribute monster and it was 2-5 doing piercing damage every day of the week. There's nothing to say about Angusti Clavi, 0 hope in the F tier. The second worst card of the Dragunity archetype is probably Dragunity Javelin. It's a level 2 tuner. It has the effect whenever it dies, you can equip it to a Dragunity. Now this set did give Militum, which could summon it, in theory, Javelin dies, equip it to Militum, and then Militum summons the Javelin. In theory, that's never gonna happen in a normal game. So again, straight into the F tier. Pilum was also going straight into the F tier. Pilum is the first of the Dragunity that has the effect when you normal summon it, you can special summon a Winged Beast Dragunity monster from your hand, then equip itself to it. Being a level 3 tuner means it was a way to summon Dragunity Trident easily if you ever wanted to summon it for some reason. Oh, and its additional effect, whatever it's equipped to, you can direct attack with it, dealing half damage. Whatever equips to becomes a Cyberdark Edge. But Cyberdark Edge was Cyberdark Edge, so I don't know why you would ever need that. So that's the other card going straight into F tier. Slightly better than the other two, because, you can summon a guy from your hand or whatever, but Partisan is another card that came out here with the effect when it's normal summon, you can summon a guy from your hand and equip itself to it. It's slightly better, which is why I'm going to put it in the C tier. Since it's level 2, you would think level 3 might be better than level 2, but level 2 just made more sense for this deck since all of our good synchros were level 6 and all of our good non-tuners were level 4, right? Its additional effect made whatever it's equipped to a tuner. Now, although this effect was basically never used in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! I still have to put it in the C tier because I was really intrigued by the possibility of synchro tuners back then. Back then, the only synchro tuner was basically Formula Synchron. So it was a really cool concept. I was sure that synchro tuners were gonna be more important later on. But overall, not that good, bottom of C tier. We're gonna talk about Dragunity Barcher because this was actually something that I actually used Partisan in. What Barcher does is it's basically, a better Vadriana. Vadriana, when Synchro Summon, only equips 1. Barcher, when Synchro Summon, equips everybody. But being level 8 at this time, we're a decade away from the release of Koos or something like that. There was no way to make a level 8 that required a Dragon Tuner and a Winged Beast non-tuner. So this card is gonna stay in C tier for a long time. But I did try to make it work. Barcher, at one point I was doing things like Barcher equip Partisan and 2 Phalanxes, and then, level 8 the Barcher down to 7, summon the Phalanx, make a Mistbird Colossalus, level Eat the Butcher down to level 6, summon the other Phalanx, make another Spirit Colossalus, and since it's Synchro Tuner, I make Quasar with it. You know, attack for 8k after the 2 Mist Spirits make the opponent's monsters 0. So, you know, I did try, which means it's gonna stay in C tier for a while. So Partisan's probably bottom of C tier. Butcher, yeah, it's probably also like just slightly better than that in the bottom of C tier. Now Dragunity Trident, the other extra deck monster that we got at this point, you know, for the longest time, actually it still is, for all of Yu-Gi-Oh!, Dragunity Knight Trident has been my favorite artwork. Its effect is one of my favorite effects. I just thought it was so cool to be able to interact with the extra deck like that. So what it does is you can send up to 3 cards on your field to the graveyard and get rid of 3 cards from your opponent's extra deck. This was a time where card advantage was everything. Going a -1 or +1 could just mean you won or lost the duel. So, you know, this effect just didn't make sense at the time. But it's such a unique effect that I felt like, you know, would definitely come up somewhere in the future. So, yeah, this card didn't make sense at the time, but it had potential. We'll put that, I don't know, I guess like somewhere in the bottom of C tier over here as well. Next up, Dragunity Militant. Now, its levels were great. Like, Dragunity were hungry for level 4 non-tuners specifically, just because, you know, Phalanx, the best tuner, is level 2, and all of the best synchros were level 6. Now, Militum, once per turn, can summon a Dragunity in your spell trap zone to the field. So all of these other tuner monsters that couldn't summon themselves like Phalanx does, Militum could summon them. So it's kind of like, you know, all the way back in 2011, so that's 15 years ago, we had a card that did half of what, you know, Dragunity Glow does, or did half of what Dragunity Coronus does. You would think, you know, in 2011 that would have been good enough, but unfortunately it wasn't. It was way overshadowed by Ducks. So I'll just put that in the middle of C tier for the time being, which is like, you know, pretty good considering how bad this wave of support was. Dragunity Primus Pilus, the card that every single Dragunity player has read and thought, this card is definitely gonna be good someday. What does Primus Pilus do? Well, it's a 1 tribute, which is its only drawback. But when it's normal or special summoned, you can equip a Dragunity from your deck. So you can, it's like Tribus, you know, Tribus, normal summon, dump a Phalanx. Primus Pilus, even better. When you summon it, you can equip the Phalanx directly from your deck, summon it, and then go for level 7 Synchro, like Black Rose Dragon. And then the Phalanx will be in your graveyard for your Ducks or Legionnaire to equip on the following turn. You know, in theory, so good. But the 1 tribute was just such a death sentence for this card. And every time like something comes out in Yu-Gi-Oh! That feels like it can summon Primus Pilus more effectively, like all of the Dragunity players just get hyped up. You're like, oh, can we summon Primus Pilus with this? Like when Transmodify came out, like, oh, we can Transmodify into Primus Pilus and equip Phalanx from deck. Or when Pendulums came out, be like, oh, we can set our Pendulum skills and Pendulum summon like 3 Primus Piluses from our hand and equip 3 from the deck. But no, Primus Pilus never did anything. And even today, like, I'm pretty sure like all of the Dragunity players are holding on to their Primus Pilus, be like, this is gonna be good someday. And even Konami thought it was good, you know, it's the highest rarity thing that they printed. It's like same rarity as Ducks. And the funny thing is, it misses timing. So like if you summon it from your hand with say Partisan or Pilot, their effects to equip to Primus Pilus makes it miss timing, so it can't equip from the deck. But yeah, it is okay. I guess it can slot in higher than like these other unusable cards. It like felt like it could kind of be used. And finally, we have these 2 guys, Brandystock and Corseska. I'm sure a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Players are familiar with these 2 cards because they were meta at one point in the game, namely full power Dragon Ruler format, simply because they were the only wind level 1 tuners that they could search with Tempest to help them make level 8 synchros with. But as for the effects, Brandy Stock, whatever it's equipped to, gets to attack twice. So your Dux becomes 1900 attacks twice. Pretty decent effect, to be honest. Corseska, so if you equip a Corseska to a Dux, whenever it kills something, it searches basically another copy of itself or something with the same type and attribute. So if you equip it to a Dux is a 1900. If it kills something, you can search a Dux from your deck. If you equip it to a Vadriana, if you kill something, you can search any Wind Dragon, so like a Phalanx, for example. If you didn't already have it in rotation, in hopes of normal summoning the Phalanx next turn and synchroing with the Vadriana that somehow didn't die. So these two were alright. I think Brandy Stock was slightly better at this point. I'm gonna put them in, I don't know, maybe around here. Best of the bunch. Best of the non-Phalanx tuners. So yeah, at this point we still had a bunch of cards in the C tier with some potential, but a pure deck was still not possible. I was still, probably mixing and matching in these cards with the Cyberdarks, just because I like them a lot. Especially Corseska. If you equip Corseska to a Cyberdark, it's 1600. If it kills a monster, you can add from your deck to your hand any Cyberdark from your deck to your hand. That just got me closer to activating, Cyberdark Impact, which I thought was the coolest thing ever to resolve back then. Coupled with Future Fusion, which stopped everything, all of the things you would ever want to equip in the graveyard at once, and then potentially summoning a 5-God dragon 2 turns later. And if they got over that 5-God dragon and you summon your Cyberdark dragon with Cyberdark Impact later and equip the 5-God dragon and it goes up to 7,000 attack, yeah, that was the type of shit I was on at this point. Nowhere near competitive, but absolutely fun maxing the hell out of the game. But yeah, Wave 2 of support, absolutely trash. All of them were low C tier or even F tier cards. And we still don't have a pure deck that we can play with. But everything changed once we got the structure deck Dragunity Legion in March of 2011, which immediately propelled this deck into tier 1 status by introducing 5 support cards in the main deck. Now, the structure deck reprinted everybody except Phalanx and all of the extra deck cards. So by no means was it a way to save any money, since we still had to buy Hidden Arsenal or Dual Terminal to get the Phalanx and the important synchros, Starstrike Blast as well. But this structure deck would fundamentally change Yu-Gi-Oh! Forever. You could even maybe identify the release of this structure deck as the boundary between old school Yu-Gi-Oh! And modern Yu-Gi-Oh! That's how influential the structure deck was. In the structure deck, although we didn't get any of the extra deck cards, we got 5 brand new main deck cards in the form of Dragunity Armor Leviathan, Dragunity Armor Mistleton, Dragunity Atlas, Dragon Mastery, and Dragon's Ravine. Now, this deck did fall off after 1 or 2 major events, from tier 1 status down to tier 2 status. All of the hype was basically due to this one card, Dragon's Ravine, which is it's not going into A tier, it's going straight into double S tier. Meta defining, game breaking card. Before the release of Ravine, there was no such thing as a deck this consistent, this fast at setting up, or this good in the grind game. Dragon Ravine did everything. A continuous spell or a field spell in this case that gave you a search every single turn. And you can run 6 of them because you can run 3 terraforming as well. It gave a level of consistency that you can see the Dragon's Ravine in your opening hand 60% of the time. That was unheard of. You can do the same thing that you want to do every turn. You can open up the same way optimally, 60% of the time you go first. And then not only that, you can do the exact same thing again and again 3 turns in a row because you have 3 Duxes in your deck that Ravine can search every turn for. And if you had the Pot of Avarice, you can shuffle back, 3 Duxes and 2 Vadrianas, draw 2 cards, and then just Ravine 3 more times that duel for a total of 6 times. You really had to live through this era to understand just how ridiculous that was at this point in Yu-Gi-Oh! Unless opposing decks open the nuts, their turn 1 play is like tea setting, while this deck, more than half of the time, was opening with an actual play like Stardust Pass on turn 1. However, the deck's main strength was also its biggest weakness, and the reason why it fell to tier 2 status over just a short period of time. And that's Ravine being very prone to getting MST'd. Since it does discard for cost, if your opponent chains MST to this, not only do you lose your Ravine, which is your entire consistency engine and your entire grind engine, but you also went neg 1. That's absolutely a death sentence for this deck. But yeah, with the release of Ravine, this deck becomes a playable deck, and we can start moving cards up into A and B tiers. Phalanx, Vadriana, Dux. Dux is probably above Vadriana at this point. All go into the A tier. Legionnaire can also go into the A tier. Tribus is going to fall a lot in the C tier because, both Tribus and Primus Pilus, Ravine does what they do, just better. So these 2 cards are going to fall a lot down in the C tier. Gayderg and Gaybolg were alright. They go into the B tier. Now the optimal way to play this deck was basically like, 12 engine cards and like 28 staples. You ran like 3 Ravine, 3 Terraforming, 3 Phalanx, 3 Dux, maybe a Legionnaire or 2, and then the rest all staples. Because Ravine guarantees you a play every single turn, so you didn't need to run high engine count to guarantee that you have a play every single turn. No matter what you draw, you can turn it into a play. So this deck was unique on that level, being the first deck who actually can do that, like making it work with such a small engine count and such a high staple count. Well, a lot of players were kids back then, me included. We didn't have the funds to get that many staples, like all those effect veilers, all those solemn warnings and whatnot. So all we could do was try to increase our engine count. And every budget Dragunity player who tried to increase their engine count started with Militum. So yeah, he's gonna go straight to the top of C tier. And even borderline B tier for the budget players. So I think that's all the movement that needs to be done for now. We can get on to the next card, Dragon Mastery. It's pretty funny, like Konami really didn't want to give archetypes, dual terminal archetypes like spell trap support in their name, but they did cheat around here by giving, Dragon Ravine, Dragon Mastery. Dragon Mastery is the continuous spell that we got in the structure deck. To this day, like this card hasn't even been reprinted once. The only place to get this card is from this structure deck, which is quite interesting. Now, Dragon Mastery, all your Dragunities that's equipped with something gains 500, and it has a very unique effect in that you can equip a Dragunity from your hand to any monster. So that includes like just random ass monsters that has absolutely nothing to do with Dragunity, which opens up for some pretty funky interactions. Now, while a lot of people did talk about this card and used it ironically or in like stupid gimmick combos, it's still going to go into the F tier. So to give an example of the dumb things that people were trying to do with Dragon Mastery, is like equipping a Corsiska to a Dark Spellcaster that can attack multiple times. That would let whenever that Dark Spellcaster destroy a monster, search a Dark Spellcaster. So if your Dark Spellcaster equipped with Corseska, it also gets a 500 boost, but anyways. If your Dark Spellcaster equipped with the Corseska kills 5 monsters in one battle phase, you can search all 5 pieces of Exodia during that battle phase. Me personally, what was I doing with it? Well, I was, trying to equip the Brandy stock onto the Gaybolg with Dragon Mastery. Was that a good play? No. It gave it, a 500 boost, but even if it didn't, a Gaybolg self-boosting effect wasn't once per turn. It was once per damage step. So if you can attack twice with Gaybolg attack, banish a Dux, it goes up to 3-5. Gaybolg attack again, banish a second Dux, it goes up to 5k. That's over 8k, that's an OTK, Just fun things like that were possible with Dragon Mastery, but I don't think anyone ever unironically ran Dragon Mastery. On a similar boat, but, was the Dragunity Armor Leviathan. Now, it was better. It was a better card. It has a grave effect that revives itself by banishing Dragunity that's equipped. And it was 2/6, it was pretty big. So it's a lot better than Dragon Mastery. This card was alright actually. On summon, it has a unique effect to equip any dragon in the game to it. Now, unlike a pure Dragunity deck, you probably equip a Phalanx. Similar to like Barcher equip Phalanx, you can make a level 10, Leviathan equip Phalanx, you can make a level 10. Now at this stage in the game, there were basically no level 10s except this fella here, Trident Dragon. Now I know like some of you might have Tenpai PTSD or something, oh shit, Trident Dragon, it must have been nuts in 2011. No, it's seriously not. It was never that good in 2011. Don't worry about it. And yeah, there was no other level 10 synchro options that you can make with it, which means it goes into the C tier. Now people were doing funny things with it, like equipping a Light and Darkness Dragon to Dragunity Armor Leviathan, which was like the prehistoric towers that people couldn't get over. And you can set that up. It's not that difficult to set up because Dragon's Ravine second effect dumps dragons. You can dump Leviathan, you can dump a Light and Darkness Dragon, no problem. And you get the towers. So how that combo worked was, when Light and Darkness Dragon goes from the field to the graveyard, it nukes your own board, and that monster reborns a card. So you can reborn the Leviathan. And then Leviathan on summon equips the Light and Darkness Dragon. It's not. So if they Dark Hole you, that loop happens. You summon the Leviathan, equip the Light and Darkness Dragon. If they Heavy Storm you, this loop happens. You summon the Leviathan, equip the Light and Darkness Dragon. If they kill Leviathan by battle, the loop happens. Your Light and Darkness Dragon triggers summoning the Leviathan, which equips the Light and Darkness Dragon. So that was a thing that was considered when it came to Dragunity Armor Leviathan. But for the most part, it was a gimmick that no one really ran, but it's obviously much better than Mastery. So it's probably going in the top of C tier actually. Now Dragunity Armor Mistleton, the level 6, was pretty good. It had its uses in the deck. Its main drawback is that Dragon's Ravine can't search it because Dragon's Ravine only searches level 4 or lower. So, this is an amazing card. It just wasn't consistent enough. And since you can't search it on demand, there was quite a lot of debate on whether Mistleton should be ran in a Dragunity deck or not. It was a decent tech option, so it goes in the B tier. It was a decent option that could dodge Effect Veiler on Dux. So if they try to Effect Veiler your Dux, attempting to equip a Dragunity Phalanx, for example, you could just Mistleton over the Dux, equip the Phalanx, and summon your Stardust anyways like that. It was also able to improve the speed when you're going first. Obviously if you open Ravine Phalanx, you just discard the Phalanx, search Dux. That's the optimal scenario. But what if you didn't open Phalanx? You either took a neg 1 by dumping the Phalanx with Ravine and then normal summoning the Dux, Or you could, search the ducks and then normal the ducks and then Mistletoe over it if you happen to open the Mistletoe. So it was a good card, making it a decent tech card that some Dragunity players ran and some didn't. Finally, Dragunity Atlas was another exclusive card we got in the structure deck. Dragunity Atlas, like the Partisan, like the Pylon, had the effect when it's normal summoned. You can special summon a Dragunity from your hand and equip itself to it. But its other effect is better than Partisan. The other effect being, if it's sent as an equip to the graveyard, you can pop a card on the field. So it was a form of back row removal. Before we had decent removal with the Legionnaire for monsters only. Now we have something that could not only pop a second monster, it can also pop back rows, which was much needed. Being sent from the equip zone to the graveyard, also, it counted as a spell and not a monster. So it was a much needed out to cards like Dimension Fissure, which would otherwise wreck this deck. Not Macrocosmos though, only Dimension Fissure could be outed like this. It was a decent, and all of these are searchable off Ravine. It was also a decent out to Necro Valley, which has always been a thorn in Dragunity's side throughout its history. Of course, back then we also had the field spell wars. Only one field spell was allowed on the field, so whoever placed their field spell second basically won the duel. I thought that was a really cool mechanic. We should bring it back, to be honest. I really like that, but yeah, Atlas would be another out to that. Just simply making Legionnaire pop 2 cards was great value. You could also equip it to Vadriana. Vadriana boosts itself up to 3/8 by sending the Atlas and popping a card. Was also good Yu-Gi-Ohs. So yeah, the question is, does Atlas make A tier at this stage? Maybe. It might have not reached like 100% playability in Dragunities. It might have been in the side deck of some, so I'll just put it in the top of B tier for now. Legionnaire also had other uses at this point. I think Tech Gen as Hyper Librarian was out, so you can like Legionnaire Phalanx go into Librarian, and every time you synchro climb with Adriana, you drew 2 cards. So that was really cool, which is why like Legionnaire would be above Atlas. They weren't, Legionnaire Atlas, quite famous duo together, but that wasn't the only thing that they did. I think Trishula might have came out at this point as well, or maybe a bit earlier than this point. Legionnaire plus Ducks plus Phalanx was 9. You could Trishula that way, which makes Legionnaire just better than the Atlas. And I think the rest of C tier, I think this is fine for the rest of C tier in this order. With the structured deck cards done, this would be the last Dragunity support that we see for about half a decade. The dual terminal story for Dragunities was seemingly over, but the Dragunity story as a deck in the TCG has just begun. In 2011, Exceeds were released, and for Dragunity, it was more of an annoyance than anything at the beginning, since now any 2 level 4s can make Utopia, which had the stats to crash into a Stardust Dragon that before then was really hard to beat over. It was not until 2012 in Galactic Overlord did Dragunities get some cool, worthwhile Exceeds. And it was at this point, with the release of Galactic Overlord, that you could consider the birth of the first modern day combo deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! Now it's debatable which combo deck you consider the first modern combo deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! But I'd say the conversation comes down between 2 decks, either Dragunities or Infinities. So yeah, the Dragunity and Infinity players were the original pioneers of the modern day combo deck. And I don't mean like all combos, I just mean modern combos where you set up a board of several threats, of several negates, and say, come break my board, kind of a playstyle. And you try to make the exact same board every single duel, so you need like a level of consistency there, which Yu-Gi-Oh! Hasn't really reached until this point in the game. So the main card that Galactic Overlord gave was this card right here, Heretic Dragon King of Atum. Not a Dragunity card, but it significantly made our end board far more threatening. So instead of, ending, just one Dux ending on a Stardust on your first turn and setting a bunch of traps, now if you have the Dux plus a Mistletoe, or if you have the Ravine plus a Zephyros, the main 6s that you make Heretic Dragon King of Atum with were either Vadriana plus Gaydurg or Mistletoe plus Gaydurg. You, instead of like a lone Stardust, you got a board like this. Atum plus Red Eyes Darkness Metal plus Stardust Dragon. One of the first modern end boards. You had your Stardust Dragon protecting your board from something like Dark Hole. And if they fail to answer either your Red Eyes Darkness Metal or your Heretic Dragon King of Atum, both of them on the following turn are going to generate you another +1 at least. And at this point, that is unsurmountable advantage. That immediately steamrolled the whole entire game. And don't forget you have the Dragon's Ravine as well, that's searching the Dux and making another level 8 on the following turn as well. And like Dragunity was toolboxing the extra deck like no other deck has ever toolboxed the extra deck before with, such consistency, right? Like the Ravine is probably making a Strap Dragon. The Strap Dragon is going to pop itself and a card your opponent controls. So this is like a, truly revolutionized Yu-Gi-Oh! It came from the set Duelist Revolution, like my sneak peek map, truly revolutionary gameplay, and I'm not even being sarcastic. Like a extra deck card on demand that can remove any problem, whether it's monster, whether it's back row, whether it's floodgates. It's just insane. And then to top it all off, the Red Eyes Darkness Metal can reborn it from the grave, and then you can pop another one on the same turn. And every turn the Red Eyes Darkness Metal doesn't get answered, you can reborn the Scrap Dragon and pop something else. Comboing like no one's ever comboed before, and toolboxing like no one's ever toolboxed before. And to top it all off, there was also this card, also in Galactic Overlord, Photon Strike Bouncer. Until then, Dragunities did have a hole, which is that it had no form of monster negation. Once Photon Strike Bouncer came out, it completely dominated so many matchups. It dominated normal summoning Tour Guide. It dominated normal summoning Rescue Rabbit. It dominated normal summoning, Tenki going normal summoning Bear. All these slow decks just got completely wrecked by Photon Strike Bouncer. So although this format was called Chaos Dragon format, I firmly believe that Dragunity was the best deck at this point. And if you opened the Stone Cold Nuts, you could sometimes even summon both Stardust and Bouncer on your turn 1. 2 negates. That was beyond the gold standard of 2012. The dominance would be short-lived, however, as Merlantians were released. Their Chainlink 1 Infantry, Chainlink 2 Marksman, Chainlink 3 Megalo interacted very favorably against the Stardust Bouncer field, unfortunately for us. Later on in 2013, we would get Constellar Ptolemy Messiah 7, which was a really cool card. So we had the unprecedented consistency, the unprecedented control, the unprecedented combo aspects. Ptolemy Messiah 7 gave us the aspect of aggro as well in the deck. Its effect being able to bounce the Red Eyes Darkness Metal that you summoned with Heretic Dragon of Atum as a 0/0 statted monster can be bounced, and this is before the Red Eyes Darkness Metal errata as well, so you can use it once every time you summon it. Easily gave you boards like this. So Stardust, M7 plus a 2/8 Red Eyes Darkness Metal, which conveniently adds up to 8,000 attack, which is why the deck also was able to play aggro as well. Dropping 8k OTKs on demand. Now, unfortunately, in the same set, Evil Swarm Ophion would come out, and that card completely wrecked any synchro-based strategies. Luckily for us, we do have Ravine searching Legionnaire Achilles, which can pop the Ophion, provided they don't have any ways to protect it. But basically, Achilles would go into the A tier at this point. Gaydarg should have gone in the A tier as soon as the tomb came out. Gaydarg is, yeah, that's probably like the second best card here. Mistletoe would also go up to the A tier at this point, just for making a tomb. We'll slot it in right here after the Vadriana. But yeah, Gaydarg was probably better than Vadriana at this point, simply because we used it like twice or 3 times per turn, since Red Ice Darkness Metal Dragon pre-errata just can't keep bringing it back. Now the big thing was what came after. And immediately after, we finally had our fun with like 1 month of Constellar Ptolemy Message 7, maybe it was half a month, like even less. Lord of the Tachyon Galaxy came out, one of the most influential sets in the history of the game that released full power Dragon Rulers along with full power spellbooks. For Dragunities, it was pretty good. It meant we got Tempest and Goldsark, which searched our missing combo piece in Mistletoe. We finally have 6 cards in the deck that can search Mistletoe, boosting our consistency rate of like a good turn 1 combo all the way up to maybe even like 60%. So like it was 30% to summon and attune turn 1. Now it's probably like a decent 60% with the inclusion of Tempest. Dragunity was also the most efficient deck in the format at making Crimson Blader, which completely counters Dragon Rulers, which was the best deck in the game at that point. However, Dragon Rulers were running all these hand traps, and like a simple Ducks into Vadriana into a level 8 climb nets 4 draws for their maxi, which they have a decent chance of drawing an effect Veiler for. So even though this deck had a good Dragon Ruler matchup, it wasn't like a sure thing or anything close to that. Furthermore, spellbooks were a terrible matchup for this deck, since you normal summon the Ducks, they fate it, and your turn basically ends. And then they just keep looping the fate. Yeah, and of course, like Evil Swarm Ophion was not a good matchup for the deck as well. But the deck was an okay rogue option at this point, although being a rogue tier deck in a tier 0 format wasn't exactly where we wanted to be. Following the banning of the baby rulers in early 2014, Dragunity rulers became the tier 1 deck. Ravine was back into, I say not double S tier status, but it was S tier status, aka actually meta relevant in a tier 1 deck. There was some back and forth between which build was actually the best deck, pure rulers without any of the babies, or Dragunity rulers. Dragunity rulers ran a solid lineup of usually 3 Phalanx, 3 Ducks, 1 or 2 Mistletoe. They ran the full lineup of a Gaydarg and a couple of Vadrianas. Legionnaire and Achilles might have been in a lot of side decks, especially for Ophion. Gayborg was probably demoted to tier. We can probably safely demote that into C tier status at this point. Mistletoe was probably more important than Vadriana at this point. And yeah, like Dragunity rulers ran the entire Dragunity lineup basically, and did the entire Dragunity lines of plays with Atom, with Bouncer, with M7, and all of that. And we probably should have moved this up a couple of minutes ago, but of course, in pure Dragon Rulers, Brandystock and Corseska were their choice of tuners. So these cards can all go into the S tier, which were meta relevant in a tier 1 deck. We might even put these higher. Corseska was slightly better because they didn't care about the effects, they only cared about the stats. Corseska was just a bit bigger. So yeah, I guess these I think Pure Rulers was generally considered slightly better, so I'll put the Korseska and Brandy stock into S tier for now, while we keep the rest in A tier. The fun was short-lived, as the very next ban list was a nuclear bomb style ban list that set Dragunity all the way back into the Dark Ages. And that's when all of the big rulers, including Tempest, which was probably the second most important card in the deck, and Ravine, which was easily the most important card in the deck, all getting banned. Dragunity were no longer playable in any capacity. All of these cards are going straight back into the C tier. No more S, no more A, no more B tiers. And yeah, with basically no hope in sight. I guess Ravine can stay up there because it was, so good that it got banned. We don't have to move that into the C tier, but yeah, the deck was done. Now, to compensate, to give us a little bit of hope, in January of 2015, a new Dragunity card actually came out in Secrets of Eternity, Dragunity Divine Lance. So this wasn't that good of a card, especially if Konami intended to replace Dragon's Ravine with this card. You can equip it to a Dragunity. It's a quick spell. It gives your guy trap immunity. It gives it a little bit of attack boost. And once per turn, it can equip a Dragunity tuner from your deck to it. So it's like basically a Primus Pilus, except instead of being a neg 1, and because it's a tribute summon, it's a neg 1 because it's like an equip spell, right? So yeah, this card is like what Primus Pilus wants to be, But yeah, it was definitely nowhere near as good as Ravine, and this deck was still completely unplayable. But it did give hope that the Dragunity dual terminal storyline was not over, and that maybe more cards were on the horizon for this deck. Now, it was also at this point, you might have started to know me, just playing high-ranked dueling network all day. I was studying in uni, so had quite a bit of free time to do stuff like that. At this point, I was probably either playing pure Yangzings or Heretics on dueling network. If you remember me from like the good old like Mega Capital G dueling network videos or whatever. What a guy. Shoutouts to Mega Capital G, or like Asian Eyes, White Dragon, those guys. But that was the era. And then just slightly after, also in a bit later on in 2015, Zephyros came out, so I was the guy playing Yangzing Zephyra and Ritual Beasts on high-rated dueling network, and probably about the time that I started this channel. And I moved on to those decks, and a big reason I think was because Dragunities got completely neutered by the ban list. But yeah, we got one new card. Where should I slot this? I guess it's okay. We'll just put it here above Gaborg, right in the middle of C tier. But if Dragunity Divine Lance was a teaser for more Dragunity support to come, the timing was way off, because we wouldn't get anything for over 3 years. Now, fast forward to 2017, where Ravine got unbanned, and it came back to 3. Unfortunately, this was bang in the middle of Master Rule 4 format, which is where you could only summon, just one Synchro monster into the extra monster zone. If you didn't make Link monsters, you can't summon any more at all. Even though we got Ravine back, we still didn't have Tempest, and trying to play like a 2011 level deck with Master Rule 4 going on was just, still unplayable. Fast forward a little bit, another year into 2018, July, when Cybernetic Horizon was released. It's still Master Rule 4, so these cards, again, don't really mean much, but we did get a big batch 3 main deck cards and 2 extra deck cards in Cybernetic Horizon. The cards were Dragunity Legion, Dragunity Kus, Dragunity Senators, Dragunity Knight Lun, Dragunity Knight Ascalon. The cards were alright. I won't go into that much detail. By then I already had a channel. I was like already documenting how I felt about these cards, what I was doing with these cards at this point. So I'll just do a brief rundown. Now Dragunity Legion is going straight into the F tier. It's such a disappointment. You know, Dragunity Legion was the name of our structure deck that changed everything for the deck, right? But it's so bad. Like, it's basically just the trap version of like Dragon Mastery. So it's even slower than Dragon Mastery. Yeah. Straight into the F tier. I don't even want to talk about it much. And at this point, like even with 3 Dragons Ravine, the game has moved far beyond, you know, like a 50% combo rate being acceptable and like anything beyond 50% combo rate being the nuts. So Senators was a nice boost. Now Senators is a level 4 wing beast that equips from deck, so it's kind of like what Primus Hylas might have been if it was level 4 and not level 5. It does require a discard though, so you know, whether you're equipping from deck with Divine Lance or Primus Hylas or Senators, you were taking a -1 somehow to do it. But it was good, and you know, like Senators didn't completely overshadow the Ducks. The Ducks still did things more efficiently with, you know, less cards if you had a graveyard setup. But if you didn't, Senators can take a -1 to do the combos without graveyard setup. And you know, you have like 2 good tuners now. So there's like twice as much demand on the Ravine. But everything is really just going into C tier still, including the Ravine. Like, maybe not the Ravine because Dragon Links were a thing, but yeah, Senators is probably actually like the best card in best Dragunity card at this point. There's the Loon. It's another level 6 synchro. It's a synchro tuner, which is really interesting. You know, I was really high on synchro tuners. That probably also drops the Partisan down to F tier, because we'll put it below the Dragon Mastery for the memes. But you know, like, we have a natural synchro tuner now. At this point, synchro tuners were getting released like every couple of sets. They weren't anything special. So I think we know there's basically no more hope for the Partisan anymore. And being a synchro tuner was actually more of an annoyance than anything. Since its effect was like the Vadriana in that it equips like a Phalanx or something from the graveyard when you summon it. And then you have 2 tuner monsters, which was pretty annoying. Most of the time, probably like over 90% of the time, you would just prefer Vadriana or like just run another copy of the Vadriana instead of the Loon. The Loon was only slightly better, but not in any significant way when you're making rank 6s. So if you make a rank 6 with a Loon rather than Vadriana, this goes to the graveyard, you can give someone a 1000 attack boost. No, but like basically it's just a worse Vadriana at this point. So it's probably still better than Gaborg. Gaborg is nearing like hopeless level. But yeah, we also got Ascalon, our level 10 boss monster. Its effect doesn't once per turn, and it can banish your opponent's entire board. It's pretty good. It didn't like contribute to combos in any way, but it was a good OTK piece to make. So we'll probably put this like just below all of the combo pieces and above like the rest of the cards. And finally we got Kus. So this was actually like the card that Dragunity players were waiting for, because if you use it for synchro material, it can be treated as a level 4 tuner. So with your level 4 non-tuners, we can finally make Barcher. So Barcher immediately goes from the bottom of C tier all the way to like, it's definitely above Vadriana at this point. Yeah, probably go all the way like here, near the top of C tier. Of course, since the deck isn't a deck at this point, nothing's going above C tier, but... And Kus, is it more important than Phalanx? Because Kus does have the drawback that it can only make Dragunity synchros. For link summoning purposes, it doesn't matter, which was mainly what's going on at this point. So I'd say it's better than Phalanx. Obviously you still need the Phalanx to make Barlow Savage Dragon and Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, but yeah, not much to talk about at this stage because of Master Rule 4. Towards the end of Master Rule 4, we finally got Rira, which had Dragunity Knight Romulus in it, along with all of the rest of like Link Reigns Pack 1 and Link Reigns Pack 2, where most of the old archetypes, Konami gave like a archetype specific Link monster too. Now, Dragunity Knight Romulus was a really good card. In fact, it's immediately going into S tier with Dragon's Ravine. It probably even surpasses Dragon's Ravine. Yeah, at this stage. It was not used in a Dragunity deck because, as we can see, a Dragunity deck did not exist at this stage. You could still try and play it. It'll be like tier 20 or something, but it goes into S tier because it's meta relevant. It was a key card along with Ravine in one of the best decks of the format, which was Dragon Link. I actually played that deck as well. Around this time, the Guard Dragons, Pisty, LP, Agapane all came out. They were all legal at the same time. So you can see how insane Dragon Link was at that stage. Even Chaos Ruler was legal at the stage. You had 3 Wyver Busters, 3 Collapse Serpents. So while I did play like some Dragon Link at the stage, I think I was mainly doing, Electromite, Ding Long stuff, which worked just fine with 1 extra monster zone. So yeah, that was July of 2019. And after that, we all know what happened. COVID hit, lockdown. There wasn't much motivation to keep up with the game because Konami announced that Worlds was not happening, which is my main reason to play competitively. I still played what events there were. I just wasn't that, competitive about it, since the main prize that I wanted, which was like qualifying for Worlds and all that, wasn't a thing anymore. But yeah, apart from Dragon Link, I was playing some virtual worlds as well at this stage. At this stage, there was basically like 1 event per year. That might not even be a physical event, it might be like remote event. During this time, February of 2021, Blazing Vortex came out, which included, we were like drip fed Dragunity cards. We got like 1 in 2019, and then we get 1 in 2021 in the form of Dragunity Knight Gorm Fiber. It took them a whole year, over a whole year actually, to release like the guide that you're supposed to summon Gorm Fiber with. So March of 2022 did Dragunity Grisame finally come out in Hidden Arsenal Collection 1. Like, this being alone for a whole year, there was like no way to even make this without the Grisame, which was pretty weird. Now the Gorm Fiber, Grisame, they weren't meaningful cards, even though Master Rule 4 did end, or did get adjusted, according to Konami, during this time. I guess we can kind of call the deck a deck. I did make like some videos about like 4 or 5 negate boards, and I did bring Dragunities to a Nationals. We were like making boards with a Savage plus a Crystal Wing plus a Harbinger plus a Heretic Spheres, with Master Rule 4 gone. But yeah, still not a real deck. The Romulus and Ravine, at some point, the Dragon Link got completely nerfed. Chaos Ruler got banned. 2 of the Guard Dragons got banned. Both of the, Wyver Buster Collapse Serpent got limited. So I guess these aren't like S tier anymore. I think Dragon Link like never actually fully died. I guess I can like leave these up in like A tier or something, just because of that. But yeah, Gorm 5 and Grisame, we were drip feed these cards 1 at a time over long periods of time. Not meaningful in any way to Dragunities. I think I did make a video about these cards as Duel Links cards. I know it, but I can't prove it that these cards were like made by Konami specifically for Duel Links. They were alright. I actually ran them both in my Dragunity deck and Duel Links, and it did pretty well for like a couple of months. Got me a couple of King of Games. Gorm Fiber, being 7, but it's like a double DD Crow. Guisame, when it's normal summon, it can summon a guy from your grave, and then you can make Gorm Fiber, and then it's like the third Dragunity tuner that summons itself, but it's got a nerf, unlike Phalanx and Kus, which aren't hard once per turn. This guy is a hard once per turn, so that's the drawback. Open us up to some level 7 options. So like this is higher potential than this card, but they're both like just potential cards. So I guess Grisame can just go slightly above the Gabolg. The Gorm Fiber, yeah, probably about the same place, just slightly above the Gabolg. I think at some point around this time, like Barren Statue of the Stormlands got banned, so that might actually just like kick Darkspear down to F tier. Brandy Stock and Korsiska, we can pretty safely say that these are never gonna be relevant ever again. They can probably both go down to F tier as well. Yeah, they should probably be lower than the Darkspear. In between the release of Guisame and Gorgon Fiber, we actually got the biggest set of Dragunity support since, all the way back at Dual Terminal 4. We got a whopping 7 main deck cards and 1 extra deck card. Goes from the past set, April of 2021. Prior to this, Tempest actually also went back to 1. And I think Goldsark was at 1 as well. So we have access back to, our Mistletoe, half of the combo. We have 3 Ravines. Terraforming might have been limited to 1 at this point, which was really sad. I think set rotation came out. But yeah, the Ghost from the Past gave us 8 cards. They were all pretty good, but not enough to propel this deck into anywhere near even rogue status. Along with all the other changes, made the deck actually playable again. The cards were a Dragunity Obulate, Dragunity Whirlwind, Dragunity Glow, Dragunity Draft, Dragunity Remus, Dragunity Legatus, Dragunity Armogram, and Dragunity Knight Arebria. All of these were pretty good except you, Dragunity Draft. You were the only terrible card of the bunch. Dragunity Draft, upon activation, recycled a Dragunity card from your grave to your hand. Yeah, and when you attack, it makes your opponent can't respond to your attacks. Where in F tier am I gonna put it? Like, the only bad card from this wave of support. I guess we can put it like here, also, in the middle. There's no need to talk about it. It gave us 4 different names that we can potentially add off Romulus. Before this, Romulus could only add Ravine. It can only add Lance. So all 4 of these were like things you could add off Romulus. I don't know why you would add a draft of Romulus. Like, you use 2 guys to make Romulus, and then you search a draft, and you add one of the guys that you made Romulus with back to a hand, and then Romulus can summon it from the hand. Maybe that was the idea, but no, you would never do that. Every single other target was much more higher priority for Romulus to search. So yeah, at this point, I did play, even though this deck was nowhere near rogue status, it was at a level that I was comfortable enough taking it to Oceanics of all events. Now that year was like the first Oceanic post-lockdown. Oceanics were held, but Worlds wasn't held. So again, there wasn't that much motivation to do well at that event. So I might as well just take, my favorite archetype, even though it's trash. Now this was like Sprite format and full power Telement format. But yeah, this wave of support was good enough for me to waste a day playing Oceanics with. So I guess we can start moving cards back up to the A and B tiers. Now the best card at this point was probably the Romulus. because it's got so many good targets to search these days. Now, all of these cards were actually ran, so all of these are gonna go in the A tier actually. Yeah. Romulus Ravine falling out of S tier because I think Dragon Link got completely neutered. Yeah, like Gayderg and Batra were probably the best. Senators and Ducks, Kus and Phalanx, they were... Yeah, Kus and Phalanx probably comes afterwards. Senators and Ducks after then. Mistleton, we can search again. With the new Glow, actually, we might as well talk about the other cards first. So all of these go into A tier. But Glow was an amazing search target that you could grab off Romulus. It basically made a tomb so much more efficiently. Glow searching, Armogram. And then you can banish the Glow from your graveyard on the first turn to summon an equipped Gayderg. That's just instant attune. And you can use, it doesn't even negate like Gayderg. You can use the Gayderg effect again, allowing for Gayderg to do its thing, 3 or 4 times in one turn. Definitely made it an amazing card. Like, it's probably like, about the same importance as Mistleton, a bit more important than Mistleton. We also had a couple of cool other targets. Dragunity Whirlwind, side deck specifically for going second. If you have an empty board and they have a monster on the field, you can summon 2 from your deck. So that's like plays outside of the normal summon. It sets up your graveyard as well. You could main this as well. I think I was maining this. If you go second, great. If you go first, you can always discard it for cost of Senators. It was just an excellent side card. Ovulate, the counter trap, worthy of consideration to side when going first. Basically, like there's 2, like Lance wasn't a real card for Dragunity at this point, but if Romulus had 2 main targets, Ravine and Glow. If you already had access to both and wanted a third target to search, that's when you would search Ovulate to solidify your inboard if you're going first. It was fine. Solid B tier card. Remus, I think it immediately goes to like the #1 card in this deck. Yeah, I think maybe Dragon Link wasn't dead at this point. So yeah, because I remember Dragon Link being pretty hyped when Remus came out. They could run like a mini Dragunity package of, like 3 Remus, a Ravine, a Legatus, and a Mist Valley Baby Rock along with the Gayderg, and then they can make a 5th summon Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon to protect their combo from Nib. So yeah, like Remus might be borderline S tier because it was borderline like meta relevant in Dragon Link. Not all Dragon Link players ran it, but it was an option. But in this deck, it's just like, discard itself to grab a Ravine, and then it can just summon itself from the graveyard, dragon locking you. It's just like a strictly better Ravine. Some much needed consistency and also adds power at the same time. It can only synchro for Dragunity synchros, but if you're making links with it, it's just a free body. There's no reason why it wasn't the best Dragunity card at this point in time. And yeah, Dragunity Legatus, some well-needed back row removal. Like Duck's Achilles is just way too slow at this point in Yu-Gi-Oh! And yeah, Legatus, just a guy that you can special summon from the hand, so it kind of replaces Achilles completely as the back row removal option. It replaces Garuda the Wind Spirit completely as like just a random level 4 wing beast you could special summon from your hand. All around excellent addition. And one of my favorite aspects about this iteration of Dragunities is that we can concurrently play 3 different level 4 wing beasts just working in harmony together in the same deck at different ratios, probably like a 3-2-1 ratio, or like a 2-2-1 ratio, or even like a 2-2 ratio. You got Ducks as the recovery guy, you got like Senators as the starter guy, you got Legatus as the extender guy. Like fun times. I think Legatus might be the best because it gave us a play outside of our normal summon. You know, it can make Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon on your 5th summon without normal summoning. Dragunity Armogram, the main deck, level 10. Now, unfortunately, there were no good rank 10s or level 12 synchros to make with this guy at this point. But he is like a Dragon Ruler. You know, you still can link summon with him. Sometimes you just need a guy to banish the one Tempest in your graveyard to get a search, to like search your Remus or something. He came up. He has a cool negation effect, although it's not a quick effect, but you can kind of attempt to break boards with him. And whatever it kills gets equipped to him, like a cool effect, just to get around some annoying graveyard effects. I would put him in the B tier. It was like an option worth considering. It's probably better than Ovulate, actually. We can switch that around. And finally, our Aridbria. You know, it's like a Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, except it also banishes. When it kills something by battle, it also banishes to get around some annoying graveyard effects. It can be made with Kus and Remus, who can only make Dragunity synchros. So, you know, Phalanx is there for the Crystal Wing and the Barlow Savage Dragon, whereas these two can freely make the Aridbria. Overall, just a great inboard piece, really. But because it also kind of does the same thing as Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, it wasn't that important. It's definitely going in the A tier because you would obviously run it in any Dragunity deck, but it wasn't that important. We can like probably put it behind all of the combo pieces. But yeah, it was a very fun time. Like, look at all these cards in A tier that you have to run. So much of the Dragunities were actually playable. Even Leviathan was playable. So like Red Eyes Darkness Metal got errated at some point to a hard once per turn. Leviathan obviously didn't get errated. And it was like a pretty worthy replacement to Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon. Because every time you summon this guy, you get like a Phalanx back. And you can summon this guy back like 5 times in one turn and just get like 5 like Phalanxes for free out of nowhere. Red Eyes used to be able to do that, but with the errata, he can't do it anymore. So yeah, this Leviathan was actually in B tier. And is that the only cards in B tier? I guess it is. Top of C tier would probably be Loon right now. Legionnaire Achilles is gonna fall some spots. Lance was alright. Guisame was always in the back of Dragunity players' heads. This came out later than all of this, but for making like level 7 synchros, more specifically like Ancient Fairy Dragon, if you wanted to switch out your field spell for like a Floodgate, Guisame was your guy. But yeah, maybe Goron Fiber, and then Legionnaire Achilles, and then, you know, the rest. And before we get into the final batch of support, which came out like 4 years later, in between we did get Samsara Dragon, which was pretty cool. It made our combos just like so much better running the Samsara Dragon. And that made like Glow and Armor Mistleton like even more important because this is what Samsara Dragon adds back from the grave, so you need it like in the grave. So yeah, Glow and Mistleton probably like rises a few spots during the Samsara Dragon era. Probably like more important than all of the Wing Beasts actually. We'll like move it here. And yeah, this is like what Dragunity looked like before we got our final batch of support, which was 5 cards in June of 2026, so just 1 month ago. In Glorious Gallery, we got 5 cards, 3 in the main deck, 2 in the extra deck to round out our total Dragunity cards, different Dragunity card count at 45. So we went from 40 to 45 with this. The cards were Divine Wind, Falchion, Quirinus, Arius, and Georgius, our first Dragunity Lord. These cards need no introduction. I just put out like a whole batch of videos talking about these cards, so we'll just blow through them pretty quickly and rearrange the final tier list for the Dragunity cards as of today in the present. 4 of these cards, so everybody except Arius is going straight into A tier. There's a argument for Georges going into S tier actually, because it is the only one right now that has the potential to be meta relevant, since it's like, you know, a semi-generic dweller that also has a bunch of other broken bonus effects. So Arius is the only disappointing one that goes into like B tier, where, you know, some Dragunity players are debating you should include it, some aren't. Me being part of the group that says you probably shouldn't. So I've finished reordering the tier list, and I think this is the final order of the 45 Dragunity cards from best to worst. In A tier, we have these 15 cards that all pure Dragunity decks have to run. The top 3 cards being Remus, Ravine, Corinus, very fitting. They just also so happen to be the 3 Dragunity cards that I ran at 3 of. And then we have Romulus, Barcher, Georges, some like just the best extra deck cards that we have. The Vine Wind is going to be the next on the list. And it's also quite fitting, it is also the only Dragunity card that we are running 2 copies of. And Gator comes after that. If you've looked at the combo videos, we don't always summon the Gator, especially when playing under draw and stuff like that. And we still can make a great board just as fine. Next up, Falchion, Kus, Lance, Legatus, Phalanx, all cards that we run 1 off in the deck. And after that, we got like Lune, Erebria. They're at the bottom because, you know, if Erebria didn't exist, for example, Arius would take its place as a disruption that Georges can summon on your opponent's turn. If Lune didn't exist, on our own turn, the Georges would probably be summoning something like, I don't know, maybe even a Dragunity Trident. And then, but to like equip the Georges, we would need to save the Falchion or whatever for the end of the combo, which is why they're so low in A tier, but still A tier nevertheless. B tier are the cards that can be cut. So the first 5 are like the ones that are heavily considered by Dragunity players. In fact, if we start at Ascalon, that's like everyone has to be signing that at least, if not maining it. Glow and Mistleton I'm personally running, but I have cut it for long stretches, and it wasn't too bad playing Dragunities without them. And Arius, Armogram, I feel like Arius, Armogram, I might switch Armogram with Whirlwind. So Arius, Whirlwind are like the very heavily considered. The lesser considered Dragunity cards are these 5, the other 5 in B tier. Armogram, Grisame, Leviton, Trident, Obule, which have niche uses. Down in C tier, the cards that still has potential, you know, like the first 5, Senatus, Militum, Tribus, because they do something on special summon, I put them higher than the rest that only do something on normal summon. That being said, these like Dark's Legionnaire, things that only do things on normal summon, aren't completely hopeless enough for me to put in F tier, just because of the potential of like additional normal summon effects coming out in the future for this deck. Finally, in F tier, cards that I never think will ever see the light of day again. Gayborg, unfortunately, our boss monster from the very first wave of support, has fallen so far. Corseska and Brandy Stock, once upon a time key components of tier 0 decks, have also fallen quite far. A bunch of really bad spell and traps like Mastery, Draft, Legion. The rest of the jank from the second wave of support we ever got in Partisan, Pylon, Javelin, and Gusti Clavi. It's great to still have, you know, the Barcher all the way up at top 5, repping the terrible second wave of Dragunity support. Broadly speaking, that second wave of support was a disaster. Anyways, thank you for listening to me ramble on for this long about Dragunities, which was probably only meta relevant for like a total of 6 months in the past 2 decades. That is the full history of Dragunities. If you lived through it, I hope you had a good time reminiscing. If you didn't live through it, I hope you are more enlightened on a topic that is completely useless by all stretch of the imagination. This has been NY3.